I'm a podiatrist, a foot doctor. Now you may think you've got some trouble with your feet, but believe me, I've seen feet that were much, much worse than yours. Hemingway's come to mind immediately. Ernest Hemingway, the writer. I called him Papa. He had an awful pair of feet. He claimed he was cursed. He had one of the worst and most persistent cases of the creeping crud that I've ever seen. He picked it up over in Spain. Never could clean it up completely. A fungus. Made his feet stink to high heaven. He had to put aftershave on his socks to mask the odor. But that was nothing compared to his corns. Like everything else about him, Papa's corns were larger than life. He had corns that looked like turtles. In 57 years of medical experience, with feet from around the world, in all walks of life, I have never seen corns like his. We called one of them, the one on the fourth toe of the left foot, the most troublesome one, Kilimanjaro. It was that big. I cut it off and put it in a jar of formaldehyde. Papa carried it around as his lucky charm. I accused him of using it to pick up women, but he denied it. Damned impressive, though. Hemingway was a private man, a proud man, a man who liked to take care of himself. He only came to me as a last resort, and he viewed it as something of a surrender, a defeat of sorts. "You have to help me, Doc," he said. As long as I knew him, that was what he called me, Doc. "I don't know what to do," he said. It was not an easy admission for him. "My feet are killing me. With these wretched dogs," that's what he called them, his wretched dogs, "with these wretched dogs, how can I run with the bulls or hunt wild game on the veldt? Do you know what it's like to hook a marlin and play him for 28 hours on two bad feet?" Naturally, I had no idea what that was like. I don't fish, you see. Now, I had worked on famous feet before. A movie star who wanted her arches lifted, a vice president with ringworm, but these feet of his were in a class by themselves, and I told him so. I did my best with what was available to me at the time, but we were only able to curb the corns, not cure them. And he insisted that I tell him the truth about his feet, so I leveled with him. "You've got a case of chronic corns," I told him. "We can treat them, but we cannot make them go away." And it was those corns that resulted in our continued association. I would often remark on that odd twist of fate to him in later years, those corns that had brought us together, and he would inevitably sigh and say the same thing. "Yeah, shit." He could be so laconic, and he could always make me laugh. Papa grew to be very fond of me, but he never liked those corns. But he did not allow them to destroy him or break him. You see, he used them. As a writer, good fiction comes from everything you've ever known, seen, felt, and heard. Papa wrote that, and he lived it too. Perhaps too intensely, but that's not for me to say. The original working title for one of his books was The Old Man and His Feet. Only in later drafts, at my urging, did he submerge the corns. If you read it, you'll see them, and feel them. It all goes in, he said. The ecstasy and the sorrow, what you had for dinner, how the weather was, how your heart and soul, and, with a wink at me, I can see him now, your feet. But I'm being overly simplistic. Because these elements had to be in balance for the writing to be good, Hemingway habitually described bad writing as corny. You see? He himself had a lighter, surer touch, and yet not even he was immune. Sometimes when I am reading one of his books, I will find myself silently mouthing the word corns, because I have seen them in there in the mincing prose. A sudden hesitation, a faltering step. Homer nodded. Papa limped.